With Amy Scheuneman, the executive director of the WPIAL. This morning brought to us by Marcus and Mack, a law firm representing injured people. Amy, I was joking with you a couple of moments ago to ask if you were still in executive session. That was a long meeting last night, wasn't it?
It was, but it was much needed, and I think we had a great conversation amongst the board and came up with a plan moving forward, so it was well worth the time spent.
All right, so you presented three options for return to play. That's my understanding, and settled on what is basically the hybrid option that is pretty much very much in line with what the PIAA voted on the day before. So tell me about those deliberations and why the hybrid is the WPIAL's choice.
Well, we're going to be coming out with a document here to our schools by noon today, and then those will be released to the media therefore after. But the reasoning and rationale behind it is what I sent to the principals last night, is in an effort to allow schools to get started. Obviously, we have student athletes, and we need them to be students first. And there are a lot of people that are trying to do a lot of things as far as the starting of school and making decisions and figuring out how things are going to look, how they're going to work, even just the flow of people in and out of facilities for school or for practices. So we wanted to give the schools some time and flexibility to make that a priority before sports.
I'm always interested in process because we get the end result and we don't see all of the deliberations and the preparation that went into a decision. So if you would talk a little bit about the process, how did WPIAL come to this decision? How many people had their hands in here to make sure that the right decision is made?
We have a 19-member board. All were present yesterday, and they represent different constituent groups, and they also are elected officials by our member schools. So we have sitting superintendents, assistant superintendents, principals, athletic directors, parents rep, officials rep, school board rep, athletic directors rep, as I said, the elected members. So all of those folks had a voice, had a seat at the table. We all spoke about, different areas that they represent, different challenges that they're seeing, talking with their groups. They bring back information from that particular area and present it to the group. So a lot of discussion goes in trying to gather the full scope of our area, because it isn't just one isolated county or socioeconomic group. So we want to make sure that all are accounted for. That's
a lot of different areas of input and from a whole bunch of different angles. Was there one or two of those different approaches that, I don't want to say surprised you, but certainly merited some extra attention that maybe prior to this you hadn't really put that much consideration into?
Coming from the athletic directing world, I kind of am very familiar with what happens on a day-to-day basis in the school, so nothing really shocked me as far as considerations. I think, just hearing, I'm encouraged that the superintendents and others do want to allow sports to happen, but it has to be in the right time frame, and allowing some flexibility on that will help in that process.
Yeah. Heat acclimation, of course, is one of the issues when you get into the month of August and then the actual start of practice. Under this hybrid model, you're going to come up with start dates for each of the sports. And then my understanding is that within each of those sports, if a team wanted to start earlier, that's not going to be allowed. Here's going to be the date where your sport can begin to practice, and everybody in your sport is going to begin to practice on that date. Do I have that correct?
Somewhat. The practice dates actually are all going to remain as is. It's the competition dates that change.
Okay. All right. So
if a school chooses not to practice early, that's fine. But if they want to begin competitions and start at the normal time, that's all going to be allowed. It's the competition date that will change.
And, of course, football is always a consideration when you get to fall. It is the sport that most people look at and think of, although there are all these other sports that are a part of this whole mix. Football specifically, and everybody was concerned about Heinz Field and the WPIAL championships. There are many more considerations with the playoffs than just where the championships are going to be held. But if you could spend some time talking about the football decision-making process.
Well, again, a lot of those changes are going to be reflected in this plan that we'll be releasing today. So, unfortunately, I can't divulge too much information. But obviously, we did have to stick with our current scenario and how we have the parameters around us. So we wanted to make sure we made the best decisions, knowing that the PIAA may make some changes, and being able to be ready and able to do that, as opposed to not planning ahead and being behind the eight ball if that were to change. And, that's the highest risk. I mean, that's the most talked about right now. So we want to make sure everybody's prepared for that, and able to, fulfill the guidelines set forth by the PIAA, CDC, DOH, and their athletic return to sports plans. So a lot of that goes into it. So we will give the actual dates and how that's going to play out this afternoon. But it is different, probably the most so than any other sport.
We were talking yesterday with Melissa Mertz from the PIAA about this. The various different fall sports, they all have really sport-specific concerns. I mentioned to her cross country, and I think a lot of people would be shocked how many people are involved in cross country, how many athletes alone show up at these invitational meets and at the actual school league meets. That's a particularly difficult sport to get a grip on. It took a lot of work, I would assume, to come up with a cross country plan, as it did pretty much for every other sport.
Yes, and that's one of the things that's going on right now, and I'm not sure what like in that area, but there are 5Ks and other races going on, and they've kind of laid the foundation of the groundwork of how it can be done safely and successfully. So we have people speaking with the organizations that ran those to make sure that we are doing it in a safe fashion as well. So I agree that most people don't know how many people are at those events, and they are quite large, so we will have to separate if we are fortunate enough to get to the championships and still have some restrictions, but we're willing to make those accommodations to allow the students to run.
Do you get a feel from athletic directors and school administrators that you're at least going to be able to start the season at some point and maybe close to what was originally the starting time?
For practice?
Yeah, for practice and for actual competition.
Well, for practice, as long as we're allowed, I feel that the schools have been implementing their return to athletics plans, and a lot of schools have done them successfully. So I am confident in the way, if we're allowed to, that schools would be able to start practice on August 17th or heat acclimatization on the 10th. Again, as the schedule of competitions goes, those may be changed, so that'll give them more time to prepare for the actual event to happen.
Yeah, and of course the State Department of Health, the Governor Wolf's office, they'll have a lot to say about what moves forward just in terms of starting school and certainly sports as well. So I'm sure you have to be pretty adaptable to whatever is going to come next from the state. And I'm sure that you have other meetings planned, and you can always get together on an emergency basis if needed.
Yes, and that is one of the nice benefits of technology now and Zoom, and we're able to meet a lot more on a last-minute basis because people can, hook in from anywhere. So that has allowed us to meet on numerous occasions to discuss the topics, that are pressing, where we would have had to wait to meet in the past. So, yes, we will continue to meet. We have a meeting set for August 11th, a hearing panel. So there are times that we're already scheduled to meet, and we can meet again in Zoom if we have to.
She is Amy Scheuneman. She is the Executive Director of the WPIAL. Thank you for spending some time with us this morning. I appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you, Todd.
Have a great day.
You too.
It is the voice of Indiana County, WCCS 101.1 FM and AM 1160 and AM 11.